What kind of woman begs God for a child with tears and trembling only to surrender that very child once her prayer is answered, not out of fear, not from pressure, but as a radical, heart-wrenching act of worship? This is the story of Hannah, but not the version you've heard in Sunday school. Beneath the surface of this quiet mother's sacrifice lies a truth so deep, so prophetic, that most people miss it entirely. Because this wasn't just any child. This was her only son. The miracle she wept for while others mocked her. The promise she waited on while living in silence and shame. And when God finally opened her womb, she handed the child back to him. Why? What did Hannah see that others didn't? What kind of revelation would cause a mother to offer up the very thing she longed for? Was it a vow? Was it destiny? Or was it something even bigger? A spiritual transaction that would birth a prophet and shift the future of an entire nation. If you've ever laid something precious on the altar, if you've ever trusted God with your pain, your promise, or your process, then comment 777 below. Let it be your digital declaration of surrender, your amen to Hannah's legacy, your way of saying, I get it, I've lived it, and I trust him anyway. And to every one of you who supported this message through Super Thanks, thank you. You're not just giving, you're planting into something eternal. Now come with me to the mountains of Ephraim. The temple isn't built yet. The priesthood is in transition. And one woman's prayer is about to ignite a move of God that echoes through generations. This is more than a story, it's a blueprint. Let's begin. Why Hannah, given her only son to God? Crazy truth, do you know? In the days when the judges ruled, and the spiritual climate of Israel shifted like sand in the wind, blazing with devotion, one moment collapsing into disobedience the next, there lived a woman whose story, though quietly told, carried eternal weight. Her name was Hannah. She lived in the mountainous region of Ephraim, where rolling hills cradled small villages and olive trees whispered ancient prayers. There, alongside her husband Elkanah, a man known for his righteousness and unwavering devotion to God, Hannah kept house, prayed silently, and lived with a sorrow too deep to name. Every year, Elkanah would travel with his family to the tabernacle in Shiloh to worship the Lord and offer sacrifices as prescribed in the law. He honored tradition, he honored God, but even sacred routine could not erase the ache in Hannah's heart. She was barren, and that single truth haunted every step of her life. In a culture where motherhood meant honor, purpose, and divine favor, a woman without children was often treated as invisible. To be barren was to be branded, marked by silence, where there should be laughter, by emptiness, where there should be life. For Hannah, this wasn't just an absence, it was a wound that breathed. If you were Hannah, could you live with the feeling of lacking something essential, something no one else could see but you? Despite Elkanah's kindness, despite the rhythm of worship and sacrifice, Hannah lived with a private agony that never eased. But what made her pain even harder to carry was this: Elkanah had another wife, Peninnah. And Peninnah had what Hannah desperately longed for. Her womb was fruitful, her house was full, her life, at least on the outside, was complete. She had children who clung to her skirts, filled her home with shouts and giggles, and gave her the social status Hannah lacked. And Peninnah did not hide it. In fact, she seemed to take twisted delight in reminding Hannah of her barrenness. It wasn't always direct. Sometimes it was a passing comment over dinner, or the exaggerated exhaustion of managing so many children. Other times, it was sharp and calculated. Her house overflowed with joy, but her tongue dripped with contempt. "Oh, Hannah," she might say with mock sympathy, "if you had little ones, you'd understand how exhausting it is." She smiled sweetly, but her words were poisoned darts, and Hannah felt every one of them. Can you picture her in that moment, sitting at the family meal, surrounded by noise that should have been hers, forced to smile, while her soul quietly shattered? But Hannah didn't fight back. She didn't return insult for insult, not because she didn't feel the rage, but because she knew the true enemy wasn't Peninnah. The ache she carried was not just about rivalry. It was about heaven's silence, the unanswered prayers, the long nights, the voice of God that hadn't spoken her name in the way she longed to hear. Still, she endured, even when tears wet her pillow, even when she felt unseen. And Elkanah, faithful, loving Elkanah, noticed. He watched his wife grieve without words. He saw the way she drifted during family gatherings, how she would sometimes stare at nothing for too long. He tried to comfort her. One evening, with gentleness in his voice and sorrow in his eyes, he asked Hannah, "Why are you crying? Why won't you eat? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" His words were full of affection, but they didn't touch the core of her anguish. Because Elkanah was not the problem. Hannah's pain wasn't about comparing love. It was about a divine delay she couldn't explain. There was something sacred inside her, trying to be born, something no one else could understand. Have you ever loved someone deeply, but still felt completely alone in your battle? Each day for Hannah was marked by a quiet war. Inside her own home, she endured 1,000 small assaults. Peninnah's jabs were often subtle, wrapped in the disguise of domestic chatter. But every word, every smirk, every dismissive tone sliced into Hannah's heart. Sometimes it didn't take words at all, just the sight of Peninnah brushing a daughter's hair or laughing with her sons in the courtyard. These scenes became Hannah's torment, joy that wasn't hers, memories she had never made. And yet she said nothing, not a single retaliation. Not because she was weak, but because she was fighting on another battlefield. This was about more than a child. This was about covenant, about identity, about the deafening silence between her prayers and God's reply. So she took refuge the only way she knew how, inwardly. In her thoughts, her quiet faith, her stubborn belief that the God of Israel still heard her, even when the heavens were closed. She didn't scream. She didn't protest. She simply carried her burden like someone who still believed it could be lifted. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. Have you ever been in that kind of silence where no one hears your grief but God? The irony was bitter. Her name, Hannah, meant grace, but her life didn't feel like grace. It felt like delay, like rejection, like being passed over. And yet she endured, even as Peninnah paraded her blessings, even as Elkanah tried to be her comfort, even as her soul grew weary. She did not turn bitter. She did not curse the Lord. She waited. She wept. She believed. Because somehow, even in the agony, she sensed that something sacred was being written. Not despite the pain, but through it. That year, as in every year before, Hannah rose with Elkanah and his household to journey to Shiloh, the sacred dwelling where the tabernacle of the Lord stood, the place where generations brought their offerings and vows. The path to Shiloh was familiar, but this time Hannah's spirit was not. Something had shifted within her. Her anguish, long buried beneath years of silence and endurance, had reached a boiling point. Every whispered insult from Peninnah, every smug glance over a shared meal, had been quietly stored in the folds of her heart. Now, all that weight had become too heavy to bear. As they arrived at the tabernacle, the family began their usual preparations. Elkanah, with calm devotion, led his household into worship. Peninnah, with children surrounding her, carried herself with the visible pride of one who knew she was blessed. But Hannah this time could not stay among them. With determined steps, she walked away from everyone, not out of bitterness, but out of urgency, not to run away, but to seek. She needed to be alone, not with Elkanah, not among the mockery, but face to face with the one who truly saw her sorrow. There are moments when you realize your breakthrough won't come through conversations or comfort. It must come through a confrontation with heaven. If you were Hannah, would you walk away from the noise, distance yourself from those who don't understand your pain, just to be alone with God? She found a secluded corner near the tabernacle, perhaps near a stone column, or under the shadow of a curtain, where no eyes followed her, where no voices interrupted. And there, Hannah fell to her knees. The weight of years collapsed with her. Her tears flowed freely, like rain bursting through the cracks of a dam, too long restrained. But she didn't scream. She didn't raise her voice to the sky. Her lips moved, but no sound came. The prayer was silent, but the desperation behind it was thunderous. And then in that holy silence, she did something she had never done before. She made a vow. "Lord Almighty," she whispered, trembling, "if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant, and remember me and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life." 1 Samuel 1:11. This wasn't a bribe. It was surrender. She wasn't offering her son as a trade. She was offering him as an act of trust. If God gave her a child, she would not cling to him. She would release him, consecrate him. Even the thing she desired most would belong to God. If only heaven would hear. Would you dare to give away the very miracle you've been waiting your whole life for? At that moment, Eli the priest, who had been sitting at the entrance of the tabernacle, noticed her. Her body swayed with emotion. Her lips moved without sound. Her face was wet with tears. To the casual observer, she looked unwell, even unstable. Eli, misinterpreting what he saw, rose and walked over. His words were firm, even sharp. "How long will you stay drunk? Put away your wine," he said, rebuking her, without understanding the depth of her agony. But even in that moment, Hannah responded not with offense, but with humility. Through her tears, she lifted her eyes and explained gently, "No, my Lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. It wasn't wine, it was worship." And in that moment, something shifted. Eli's posture softened. The priest now saw what heaven already knew. This woman was not mad, she was moved, not drunk and desperate. And so Eli, with compassion in his voice, blessed her. "Go in peace," he said, "and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." These words were not just polite, they were prophetic. They pierced through the despair like a ray of sunlight, breaking through thick clouds. They settled into Hannah's heart, like seeds into fertile soil. And something inside her shifted. She stood. She wiped her face. And though she didn't yet hold the answer in her arms, peace had come to dwell in her heart. On the outside, nothing had changed. But on the inside, everything was different. Imagine ending your prayer not with evidence, but with a quiet knowing that heaven had heard. This was Hannah's turning point, and the heavens were no longer silent. After that day in the tabernacle, after the silent vow, the tear-soaked prayer, the blessing from Eli, something unexplainable shifted inside Hannah. On the outside, nothing had changed. She still returned to the same home, with the same rooms, echoing with Peninnah's children. She still lived under the same roof as her rival, who likely wasted no time returning to her provocations. Her womb was still empty, her arms still bare. But inside her, something sacred had settled. It wasn't denial, it wasn't delusion, it was peace. A deep-rooted calm that defied reason, as if God had gently whispered a promise, and embedded it into her spirit, like a seed, silent, invisible, but alive. And though nothing had yet sprouted, Hannah now walked as if harvest was coming. She no longer carried the weight of unanswered prayers, but the glow of unseen fulfillment. Day by day, time passed, neither rushed nor stalled. Life went on, but Hannah was not the same woman. Her gestures had new rhythm. Her silence carried strength. Her eyes no longer searched for sympathy, but seemed fixed on something others couldn't see. Elkanah noticed it. Though he couldn't name it, he knew the sorrow wasn't swallowing her anymore. She smiled more easily. She wept less. The woman once bent under grief now stood straighter, moved slower, as though savoring a peace only heaven could give. Even Peninnah's stabs, sharp and relentless, began to lose strength. They still came, but no longer hit their mark. Like arrows shot against a glass wall, her words lost their power. What does it feel like when the enemy keeps attacking, but you no longer bleed? That is exactly what happened to Hannah, though no one could see it, but her and God, who had heard her cry. Her battle had shifted realms, and she had won. And then, something began to move. At first it was faint, a moment here, a flutter there. Subtle hints, a strange stillness in her body, a sensation unfamiliar. Perhaps she placed a hand over her belly without knowing why. Her heart started beating faster, like it was trying to keep pace with a miracle. And then came the confirmation. She knew. She was pregnant. The very thing she had asked for in whispers and tears, the cry she had poured before the altar was now growing within her. The silence had been shattered. The vow had been received. Heaven had opened. Can you imagine what that moment felt like? To hold proof in your body of what you once only held in your prayers. Everything made sense now. Eli's blessing. The peace that had fallen like dew after prayer. The assurance she couldn't explain. It was all real. It had always been real. But now, the invisible had become tangible. And yet Hannah didn't see this lie as personal victory. She understood the weight of what she carried. This wasn't just a child. This was a promise, a sign, a testimony. Each day of her pregnancy, as she felt the flutter and movement of life inside her, she knew this miracle wasn't just hers. It belonged to Israel. It was consecrated from conception, set apart, destined for something greater. And when the day came, perhaps, with no fanfare on an ordinary morning, in Ephraim, Samuel was born. A child like any other to the world's eyes. Tiny, soft, wrapped in the arms of a mother who had once wept without comfort. But to Hannah his birth was thunder in the spirit. His face, delicate and new, carried the fingerprints of divine faithfulness. Every eyelash, every breath, was evidence that God hears. That's what his name meant. Heard by God. She had cried and God had answered. She had waited and God had not forgotten. Samuel was more than a son. He was a prophecy made flesh, a living reminder that heaven responds to the cries of the brokenhearted. And as she held him, as she watched his chest rise and fall, Hannah knew her life was no longer just her own. It had been caught up into something eternal. The first months with Samuel felt like sacred ground, a holy in-between, where joy and reverence intertwined with every breath. Hannah held him close, breathing in the scent of miracle and milk, running her fingers across the tiny brow of a child whose very existence defied years of unanswered silence. And yet with every coo, every gentle sigh as he slept in her arms, a quiet ache pulsed beneath the surface. Because Hannah remembered, she had made a vow, not in comfort, but in anguish, not as a bargain, but as surrender. Samuel was hers, but not entirely. He belonged to the one who had opened her womb in response to her vow, made in the tabernacle of tears. And though she had received her miracle with open arms, she also knew she would have to release him with open hands. Every smile Samuel gave her, every sound he uttered from his crib, was like a thread pulling at her soul. Not with regret, but with the weight of what she had promised. Have you ever loved something so deeply knowing the time with it was only temporary? Still, Hannah refused to let sorrow poison her joy. She didn't allow herself to grieve early. Instead, she embraced every moment like it was holy. She cradled Samuel in her arms, whispering ancient prayers over him as he slept, letting her tears soak into his blanket, not from sadness, but from awe. The Lord gives, and the Lord receives, she may have murmured. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Elkanah stood beside her, not as a passive onlooker, but as a man who understood the cost of consecration. Though Samuel was his son too, his first from the woman he loved, Elkanah didn't question the vow. He didn't attempt to intervene. He respected it. He supported it. In their household, the child was not only a blessing, but an offering they would not withhold. What kind of love does it take to prepare your heart to give away what you love most? Time, ever indifferent, passed quickly, like the wind rushing in before a storm. One day, Samuel was still babbling. The next, he was wobbling on his feet, reaching for objects with growing curiosity. Hannah watched it all with wide eyes, counting every milestone, preserving every memory. But deep within her soul, a clock was ticking. The closer Samuel came to freedom, the closer the moment came for her to fulfill her promise to God. She did not rush it. She waited until he was strong enough to be weaned, old enough to live without her constant presence. She wasn't giving him away in fragility. She was sending him in strength, not because it hurt less, but because she believed in what it meant more. And yes, the pain lingered, like a shadow that followed her, even on the brightest days. It hovered behind every laugh, every lullaby, but it never overcame her, because Hannah knew this story wasn't just about a mother and a son. It was about obedience, destiny, legacy. What if the cost of your miracle is letting it go? And so she prepared herself not to lose a child, but to fulfill a vow, to deliver a boy to the temple, not as an act of goodbye, but as an act of worship. The world might never understand it, but heaven would. The day had come, the day Hannah had long known would arrive, yet hoped would linger a little longer. The morning light stretched across the hills of Ephraim, gentle and golden, as if heaven itself was bearing witness to what was about to unfold. Hannah took Samuel's small hand in hers, the fingers she had once counted as a newborn, now wrapped around hers with innocent trust. Elkanah walked beside them, steady and silent, honoring the vow with each step they took toward Shiloh. Hannah's heart was a storm of contradictions, joy and sorrow, gratitude and grief, peace and pain, all swirling together in a sacred tension. She had prayed for this child, carried him, nursed him, loved him, and now she was about to give him back, not out of obligation, but out of obedience. Because this was never just about having a child. It was about fulfilling a promise to the one who answers the cries of the barren. If you were Hannah, could you understand the feeling of walking toward the vow you made to God, while still holding in your hands the very thing you once begged heaven to give you? As they arrived at the tabernacle in Shiloh, the familiar sights met them, the great curtains swaying in the breeze, the scent of incense rising like memory itself, the solemn hum of worship. But to Hannah this time, everything felt different. This wasn't just a place of prayer anymore. It was the altar of surrender. The very place where years ago she had knelt in agony, weeping without sound, was now the place where her vow would be fulfilled. Samuel stood beside her, only a few years old, too young to understand it all, yet old enough to walk on his own, to stand in the house of the Lord, with wide, curious eyes. Perhaps he tugged at her robe or looked up at her face, still too small to grasp the weight of what was unfolding, but just old enough not to be marked by it forever. And then they saw him, Eli, the same priest who had once mistaken Hannah's agony for drunkenness, the same man who had blessed her with words that now echoed like prophecy. He stood at the entrance just as he had before, and as Hannah approached, she felt the gravity of time fold in on itself. The past and the present converged, the prayer, the promise, the child. She held Samuel's hand tighter, stepped forward, and with a voice that trembled only slightly, she spoke words born, not just of memory but of fulfillment. "Pardon me, my Lord. As surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord." 1 Samuel 1:26-28. She wasn't just recounting a story. She was declaring a testimony. The living child standing before Eli was not only the answer to her prayer, he was proof that God hears, God remembers, and God fulfills. Eli looked from Hannah to Samuel and back again. The weight of the moment pressed upon them all. Without fanfare, he nodded, a simple gesture, but in that nod was sacred recognition. Samuel was now under the care of the priest, dedicated to the service of the Lord all the days of his life. The vow was fulfilled, and Hannah, though her arms would be emptier, walked away with something greater than what she gave. Her womb had once been barren, but now her legacy would echo through generations. Her obedience had unlocked something divine. How would you feel letting go of your greatest joy and walking away in peace? She had made a vow to God, and now she had fulfilled it. Her heart was full, her hands were open, and heaven was not silent. Before turning to leave the tabernacle with Samuel, now entrusted into the sacred care of Eli, Hannah did not walk away in silence. Her heart, though stretched between joy and loss, swelled with a deeper sound worship. She opened her mouth, and from the depths of her soul came a song not rehearsed, not composed, but birthed in the labor of surrender. Her voice rose in the holy hush of the sanctuary, echoing off the stone walls and embroidered hangings. Those who heard it paused. Even the priests, the Levites, the visitors bringing offerings, they stopped and turned, because this was not a woman wailing in grief. This was a woman declaring victory. "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. There is no one holy like the Lord." 1 Samuel 2:1-2. Hannah's song rang out as a prophetic anthem, not just for her, but for generations. She sang of reversal of justice, of a God who raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap, seating them with princes and giving them an inheritance among the faithful. This was more than praise. It was revelation, the kind only born from intimacy with pain and faith. And when the final note faded, Hannah knelt beside Samuel one last time. She hugged him close, her arms wrapped around the miracle she had once only dreamed of. She whispered into his ear, not just words of comfort, but seeds of identity. "You are chosen. You are loved. You belong to God." Perhaps she kissed his forehead and held his face in her hands, memorizing every detail before releasing him into the destiny that had already begun to unfold. Then, with a heart both broken and full, Hannah turned and walked away. She returned to Ephraim, to the same hills, the same home, the same routine. But she was no longer the barren woman. She was the mother of a prophet, the vessel of a promise fulfilled. And though she left Shiloh physically, a part of her remained at the altar, tucked in the linen folds of Samuel's priestly garment, echoing through the corridors of the tabernacle, in every whispered prayer of the boy she had birthed and then given back. Missing Samuel became a quiet rhythm in her life. Not despair, but a sweet ache, like a breeze that brushed her face and reminded her of the boy walking among holy things. And each time she lifted her voice in prayer, she thanked God, not only for giving her a son, but for the honor of giving that son back to him. Meanwhile, within the sacred courts of Shiloh, Samuel began the life he was born for. Under Eli's careful instruction, he learned the sacred rituals, how to light the lamps, how to minister before the Lord, how to listen with reverence. But more than training, Samuel absorbed presence. He listened to stories of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and something in him responded like a memory awakening. Each day, he stepped deeper into calling, even before he understood its full weight. But others began to notice. There was something different about the boy, an obedience that didn't have to be coaxed, a hunger to learn, and a stillness that held the scent of heaven. Eli, though aged and weary from years of service, watched Samuel closely. Perhaps he didn't say much at first, but he knew. There was favor on this child, a glow not of firelight, but of purpose. Even visitors to the tabernacle sensed it. They would glance twice when Samuel passed by, whispering to each other, "There's something about that one." Still just a boy, but carrying the weight of destiny. As the years gently rolled forward, Hannah's feet never forgot the path to Shiloh. Year after year, she made the sacred pilgrimage, not just as a worshiper, but as a mother. Each time she ascended those familiar hills, her hands carried a gift, but her heart carried something deeper: remembrance. A small robe, not woven by servants, but by her own hands. Every thread pulled through, not just for warmth, but for prayer. Each strand held a whispered blessing. Each fold was a hug she could no longer give in person. It was how she remained close to the son she had once surrendered, a mother's intercession in the form of fabric. If you were Hannah, how would you feel preparing clothes for your child to live a life you could no longer be part of? When she saw Samuel at each visit, it was never just about how tall he had grown. Though his stature surely changed, what caught her breath was something else: the way he moved, the wisdom in his eyes, the weight of reverence in how he stood before the altar. Grace clung to him like a second skin. It wasn't taught, it was imparted. And Hannah, watching quietly from a distance, knew what she was witnessing: not just maturity, but divine formation. God was not just using Samuel, he was shaping him. Every year Samuel seemed different, not because he outgrew his garments, but because he grew deeper into purpose. Visitors may have noticed the boy who served with dignity beyond his years, but only a mother could perceive the unseen, the invisible touch of heaven on her son's soul. And as she watched, Hannah's heart didn't ache with regret. It burned with gratitude, because the God who had once seemed silent had been writing a masterpiece all along. But the Lord, in his infinite compassion, had not forgotten Hannah either. The woman who had once walked through her home, hearing only the echo of unanswered prayers, now found her halls filled with laughter, footsteps, and the giggles of little ones. God didn't just return what was lost, he multiplied it. 3 sons, 2 daughters, 5 lives she hadn't even asked for but were given anyway. Each child was a living testimony that God does not forget the faithful, and that he rewards surrender, not with emptiness, but with overflowing. He settles the childless woman in her home as a happy mother of children. Praise the Lord. Psalm 113:9. Can you picture it? The once quiet home, now pulsing with the sounds of play, of meals shared, of bedtime stories, and songs sung softly over cribs. And in the midst of it all, Hannah never stopped thinking about Samuel. He was her first promise, her first offering, the child of the vow. And though she now had more children to hold, Samuel remained her bridge between the natural and the divine. While washing her youngest, she would think of him lighting the lamp in the tabernacle. While preparing meals, she would remember the prayer she sang the day she gave him back. While rocking her daughter to sleep, she would recall the words of Eli, the confirmation that God had heard. And through it all, Hannah smiled, because she knew her son wasn't just serving in the house of God. He was part of a movement, a plan of destiny far bigger than anything she had ever dreamed. And she, through surrender, had been part of birthing it. In the tabernacle, as the years passed, Samuel began to perceive the presence of God with increasing clarity. Though he was still young, there was something growing in him, a subtle sacred awareness that he was being set apart. He didn't know how to explain it, but it was as if the air around him was different, as if the silence inside the holy place carried weight. Even when he didn't understand, he sensed that his life was part of something beyond his own name. One night, the stillness over Shiloh felt heavier than usual. The lamps of God still flickered, casting faint light over the walls of the sanctuary. Outside the camp was asleep. Inside, Eli lay resting in his room, and Samuel, faithful as always, was asleep in his place beside the ark of God. The atmosphere was deep hushed, as if the tabernacle itself held its breath. Then it happened. A voice broke through the silence, not loud, but clear and unmistakable. It called his name gently, but with authority. Samuel. The sound wasn't distant. It felt near, intimate, almost like it was spoken from inside his very chest. Samuel opened his eyes, startled but certain. He sat up, looked around, and without hesitating got up and went to Eli. He stepped into the older man's chamber, his voice still marked by sleep, as he asked, "Did you call me?" But Eli, surprised and unaware, looked at him and answered, "No, my son. Go back to bed." Samuel returned to his mat, confused but obedient. He lay down again, the voice still echoing softly in his memory. He had only just begun to drift off when it came again, exactly as before. Samuel. His eyes opened wide. There was no doubt. Now, someone had called him. Once again, he rose quickly, his feet padding across the floor toward Eli's chamber. "Did you call me?" he asked. Eli looked at him a second time and said, "I did not call you, my son. Lie down again." Samuel obeyed, but something in the air felt charged now, as if the voice might come again. And it did, a third time, just as clear, just as near. "Samuel." Once more Samuel got up and made his way to Eli. This time, something shifted in the old priest. Though his body was tired, his spirit awakened to the pattern. His gaze sharpened as he looked at the boy and realized what was happening. It was not a dream. This was a divine encounter. Eli, now alert in spirit, said to him, "Go lie down. And if he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" Samuel nodded, still uncertain, but trusting. There was something in Eli's voice, a weight, a quiet awe, that made him take every word seriously. He returned to his place near the ark, the sacred presence pressing gently on his young heart. The tabernacle stood quiet again. But in that stillness, Samuel now waited with listening ears and an expectant soul. And then, it happened again. The voice came again, and this time Samuel was ready. He rose in the silence, heart pounding beneath the thin linen of his robe, and spoke the words Eli had taught him, words that felt almost too sacred to say aloud. "Speak, Lord, for your servant hears." And heaven answered. In that instant, the atmosphere shifted. The stillness in the tabernacle was no longer simply night's quiet. It was presence. God spoke, not through thunder or flame, but through a voice that settled deep into Samuel's bones. The words were not casual. They were heavy, deliberate, each one carrying the weight of divine justice and irreversible change. The child who had spent his days sweeping floors, lighting lamps, and quietly observing rituals now found himself in the center of revelation. The same God who had once called to Moses from a burning bush was now speaking directly to him, to a boy. God unfolded before him a message that reached far beyond anything Samuel could have expected. It was not a gentle word of comfort. It was a prophecy unmistakable and severe. The judgment against Eli's house would come. The sins of his sons, long unrepented, would not go unaddressed. And Eli, though a servant of God, had failed to restrain them. "I am about to do a thing in Israel," the voice had said, "at which the ears of everyone who hears it will tingle." Samuel listened, his hands trembling, eyes wide in the dark. He didn't fully understand all of it, but something within him, something ancient and steady, recognized the weight of what he was receiving. This was no passing dream, no fleeting impression. This was calling, and calling always came with cost. When the voice ceased, the stillness that returned was not the same as before. It carried a holy weight, as though the very fabric of the tabernacle had shifted. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with what had just been spoken, like the air was holding its breath with him. That night, a line had been crossed. The boy who had gone to sleep with questions had awakened as a prophet. His life would never return to what it was. Morning came slowly, quietly. Light crept through the cracks of the wooden walls. Samuel sat still, heart full, mouth sealed. He dreaded what would come next. How could he speak to Eli? How could he repeat those words to the very man who had raised him, mentored him, called him my son? And yet when Eli saw Samuel's face, he knew there was a weight there that couldn't be hidden. And Eli, who had seen the ark, who had worn the ephod, who had stood in holy places, spoke gently yet firmly. "What was it that he said to you?" he asked. "Do not hide it from me." Samuel hesitated, but only for a moment. With steady breath and a voice still soft from childhood, he told him everything. No word was spared. No part was softened. And as the words fell from the boy's lips, Eli listened in silence, his face still, but his heart already yielding to what he knew could not be avoided. "It is the Lord," he said at last, eyes distant, heavy with surrender. "Let him do what seems good to him." And with that the truth was spoken, and the transition was sealed. The priest of yesterday had released the prophet of tomorrow, and the boy who had once answered to men now answered to God. The story of Hannah and Samuel is more than just a moment in biblical history. It's a mirror for our own lives. It's the reminder that the most powerful breakthroughs often begin in the most private places, in tears no one sees, in prayers no one hears, in long seasons of waiting where silence feels like denial. But Hannah's story proves something sacred. God does not overlook a surrendered hearts. What Hannah offered wasn't just her child, it was her control, her right to hold on to what she'd waited for. And in releasing what she loved most, she unlocked something far greater than personal fulfillment. She became part of something eternal. That's the beauty of surrender. It feels like sacrifice, but in God's hands it becomes strategy. And that strategy still transforms lives today. Maybe you've been praying for something for years. Maybe your womb is not physical, but emotional, a barren place inside where dreams have withered and silence has become familiar. Let Hannah remind you he hears you, even when no one else does, even when you don't have the words, even when it seems too late. And if you're willing to not just ask, but entrust, then what you release may return not just as an answer, but as an assignment. A Samuel. I believe there are many Samuels waiting to be birthed through radical faith. Not just children, but callings, ministries, ideas, healings, reconciliations. But the key is surrender. So as we close this message, I invite you to reflect. What have I been holding on to that God is asking me to give back? What if my delay isn't punishment, but preparation? What if God is not just answering my prayer, but inviting me into a legacy? If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone who's been praying in the dark, share this with them. Don't keep the encouragement to yourself. If you believe in the power of surrendered faith, click like, subscribe for more biblical revelations like this, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Thank you for watching, for engaging, and for walking this journey with us. May you carry Hannah's faith, Samuel's calling, and God's peace wherever you go. And remember, what you surrender doesn't disappear. It multiplies.